Hi everyone, thanks for coming. Today we are talking about outsourcing and how outsourcing can benefit our organization. I have put forth a few slides. Let's go through these and see how we can benefit as an organization, how we can benefit from outsourcing. So, essentially, what is outsourcing? So outsourcing, there have been a number of definitions of outsourcing over the years. Most notable ones were put forth by Howard, Reward, and Patry, and they say that it is a make or buy decision. So organizations choose to build a product inside the organization, or they choose to procure it from outside the organization. So it's essentially a make or buy decision. A similar definition was put forth by Accenture in 2004. Overall, outsourcing is a conscious decision by organizations to procure goods or services from outside. So it's a decision made by organizations. It's not the procurement per se, but it is the decision to buy it from outside. So, for example, car manufacturers, they don't build engines of the car. They don't build the electronics panel of the car. They just choose to procure it from outside. There are reasons why they do that that we'll cover in the later slides. So, why outsourcing? As Quillen and Duhamel put it, outsourcing is required because the service and the goods and services that we are buying from outside, that service provider is in a much better position to provide us with that service. They are in that line of business. They probably cater to other companies providing the same goods and services, and so they have a competitive advantage. They are in a much better position to do it than we can do it ourselves. And that is one of the main reasons for outsourcing, other than reducing of costs and other things that we'll talk. So there are certain pros and cons that we have to keep in mind about outsourcing. So important advantages of outsourcing is that we can reduce our operational costs, we reduce our capital expenditures. The quality of the product, that's very important because we are buying it from an external provider. The external provider knows about the product, so we get a product with a good quality. And lastly, it helps us focus on our line of business. We are into the refrigerated warehouses, so we want to do better in providing refrigerated warehouses to our clients. So it helps us focus on our line of business. On the flip side, we need to be cautious about the fact that we are giving control to an outside organization. So we don't control what they do. So we are providing them with the information, and they take that information from us and provide us that services, and there we lose some control over there. But in spite of these deficiencies, more and more organizations are now leaning towards outsourcing. So why are we doing it? We are in the refrigerated warehouses business. We build warehouses. Our clients are Walmart and Cisco and many other food processing companies, and we work as an extended warehouse for these companies, and we provide cold storage warehouses, right? So that's our line of business. Now, in order to build a warehouse, it takes a minimum of 3 to 5 years, many times, to build a large warehouse. So there is enormous capital outlay. We have to provide for a lot of services. We have to get government permissions. We have to have manpower and other people ready to serve the warehouse. So, and our customer billing system is a dated system. So when we build Walmart or when we build other clients, we have a lot of complaints and disputes, and so our system is a little dated. And these are some areas where we can choose to outsource. Research shows that outsourcing provides distinct benefits. Number one, obviously cost reduction. Number two, it helps us focus on what we do best as an organization. And number three, it helps us with innovation. And we'll talk about this briefly in the next slide. So benefits, cost savings, roughly about 10 million of cost savings by our estimates. As you know, we are we are trying to build a warehouse in Canada to support our clients on the Canadian border and the North American border. So in order to build that warehouse, we have been scouting for locations and getting government permits and things like that. So it's a major capital investment on our part. We still have to provide services to our clients in that region. So if we don't get in there now, our competitors will. And so for that reason, we have chosen to work with an external services provider. We call them 3PL, third-party logistics services provider. We can choose to rent a warehouse from them in the interim, and then by the time in the next 2-3 years our warehouse will be functional there. So in that interim period, we can choose to rent a warehouse from this third-party logistics services provider. Transportation management. Instead of having our own fleet of these cold storage trucks, we can choose transportation. We can work with a third-party transportation services provider to provide us with transports for shipping and delivery. There's a publication, MH&L, Material Handling and Logistics, and they say that the transportation costs are going to increase. So instead of having a major capital expenditure on transportation, we can choose to work with a third-party services provider in that context. Lastly is our information technology costs. As we know, our billing system is dated. It is we have a lot of customer complaints and disputes arising out of billing. So we can choose to work with a third party on the IT side, on the billing side, where we can use newer technologies like RFID, and we can use barcode, and the data gets transmitted automatically using GPS systems and other things, and we can have a good billing system. So these are areas where we plan to outsource. What are the benefits? Other benefits are the cost savings that we realize from choosing a third-party logistics provider or choosing a third-party transportation services provider or an IT software systems provider. The benefits that we derive from them, the cost savings that we have realized, we can choose to put that in the warehousing space. So we can develop, we can look at the warehousing, the internals, internal layout, the floor space within the warehouse. We can optimize that floor space within the warehouse. So these are areas where we can optimize our operations, receiving operations. So those are the areas where we can channel that funds that we save from outsourcing. And then, of course, innovations on the warehouse, on the floor space of the warehouse, how much the aisle width should be, where this customer, where the section for this client is versus this client. So we can optimize the floor space and the layout within the warehouse. So all that cost saving translates into innovation. So we'll see some future trends. Our future trends are that as we see more and more companies are now investing into outsourcing, especially on the global supply chain. More and more companies are investing into outsourcing. What we can see is there has been a tremendous growth in companies that are, they have more budgets for outsourcing. So this is growing, and I think we have to also be in that space. So my conclusions from this slide are, that warehousing is expected to be growing every year. Warehousing supply chain is expected to be growing every year, and so the outsourcing corresponding to that sector will also be growing every year. It results in substantial cost savings for organizations. It enables an organization to focus on its own core competencies, and it improves like a global footprint. So when we go to Canada, we get a lot of Canadian customers, so it improves our global footprint. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much for coming.